While many college students spent their winter breaks in places like South Padre Island and the Florida Keys, our next guests celebrated the holidays with refugees from the genocide in Darfur. About 500,000 people have been killed in that conflict in western Sudan. Thousands of others are in refugee camps in neighboring Chad. Last week, Jim Milak, Ryan Faith, and Jason Mojica came back from those refugee camps. They were shooting a documentary about the crisis, and welcome back to Chicago, and welcome to Chicago Tonight. First of all, before you even left, you had a cameraman and a sound person, and they both bailed on the project. How come?
There's a lot of sort of concerns related to security issues, and that they were pretty apprehensive about actually heading out to that region since it was becoming increasingly unstable.
So at that point, the three of you decided just to shoot the film and record the audio yourselves. Jim, why did you go? Why did the three of you go there?
Well, the short answer is because we don't have any children. The sound guy and the camera guy, they were people that had relationships, people that had children, families. So we figured if somebody's going to go, it might as well be three, unmarried, no responsibilities. Someone has to do it, why not us?
But Jason, the motivation for going, what was the motivation?
Well, it just was sort of a matter of looking back at situations like Auschwitz, Rwanda. You can always say woulda, coulda, shoulda, but here's a situation where you actually have an opportunity to do something about it, and why would you not?
And the three of you came together as a group. How? How did that happen?
Well, I think we sort of all met bouncing around the punk scene in Chicago, just going to shows, and sort of met up that way.
And one day, the conversation got around to Darfur and what you can do about it? Is that it, Jim?
Jason and I have always been kind of partners in crime running little projects. When we were younger, we had a record label, things like that. So as we've gotten older, we've gotten more politically involved. Our tendency to start these little projects moved into the political realm. And so we were just actually sitting in a bar talking about the problem, talking about Rwanda, talking about the relation to Sudan. I wish we had done something about Rwanda, and then we realized maybe we could do something about Sudan.
All right, so the germ of the idea was a conversation in a bar somewhere. But part of that conversation, Ryan, must have been the fact that it's dangerous, that aid workers had been attacked. Was it dangerous when the three of you went?
There weren't a lot of situations that were imminently dangerous, but there were a lot of situations that were sort of very generally dangerous. Basically, by just sort of sheer luck and happenstance, we tended to arrive a day before or a day after some security event happened, or we were in the neighboring camp where there was an attack, not the camp itself.
So you had some luck with timing.
Yeah.
You met with some rebel leaders. Tell me about what those rebel leaders were like.
Well, certainly not your stereotypical movie-style rebel leader spouting sort of vitriolic rhetoric. They're before they became rebel leaders, they were, for instance, lawyers and school teachers. So these are people who just sort of, I would say, come to this through necessity.
And yet I understand that they were not particularly interested in talking about their personal lives. They were,
No, not at all.
Why not?
They stuck very rigidly to a very specific talking point, which I thought was, they had a cohesion of message that you don't even see in American politics. I would say to the guy, so what caused you to make this big sacrifice, to risk your life fighting the government in Sudan, trying to overthrow the government? And he would go on his, we want sharing of oil, we want reclaiming of our land. And it was the cohesion of their message was pretty astounding.
Well, tell me about the refugee camps, because you didn't actually go into Darfur. You were in Chad, which is where a lot of the refugees have fled to. Jason, what were the conditions like in the camps?
Well, they were kind of surprising because I think we get used to a very stereotypical, horribly pathetic sort of view of victims, and what we saw was a lot of life in the camps, a lot of people trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. So the first day it was a bit confusing. We sort of came away with a sort of general feeling of, well, they seem to be okay. What's the big problem? But we couldn't wrap our heads around that. I almost felt as though it had taken some of the fight out of me. I was confused by what I saw. So when we went back, we sort of tried again, started from the top. I mean, can you talk about the butcher?
I think what amazed me was the capacity for people to, in light of the worst situation possible, that life will go on. The capacity of people to build a community there, because it really was. You get the impression that there's.
What's the butcher story that you alluded to? What's that?
Well, your expectation is going there and to see people that are sick, people that are starving, the people that are as miserable as people could possibly be, and you see a butcher shop with a butcher who we had spoken to, who was a butcher previously, and what he wanted to show us was the pride that he had that he could cut. He took a kilogram weight, put it on the scale, cut the meat, took it off, put it on, and it was exactly a kilogram. And he had this tremendous pride of him being a very accomplished butcher. So even though he was a refugee, he had been in this camp for 2 years. He had been driven from his home, his village was burnt. He still had that sense of pride in this trade that he was able to practice in the camp.
But by the same token, he also admitted it's humiliating to be here. Essentially, I'm reliant on 8 organizations to feed my family instead of being able to do it myself.
And Ryan, those 8 organizations, you focused, your focus on, in your project, which is still, you just got back, you have a film, you haven't edited it, or it's not in theaters yet, was on the volunteers. Why were you focusing on the volunteers?
Well, there's a sort of an American tradition. Americans tend to be very generous and sort of resourceful people, so it's wise this individual decided to go pack up and move halfway across the world. To do something that's not spectacularly glorious is certainly uncomfortable, is emotionally draining, is very difficult, and try to sort of unpack that a little bit. If you look at the way that, for instance, people in the U.S. responded to Katrina or the flooding of the Mississippi in the 90s, is people showed up to be helpful in big carload lots. So, what parallels can be drawn between those two sets of behaviors?
Any specific volunteers? For example, you talk about a woman from Kansas. Tell me about this woman from Kansas. What was remarkable about her?
Well, she was unmarried, she had no family. But at the same time, she was everybody's mother. She was just an absolutely beautiful, charming woman from Kansas City who has been a nurse for 20 years working in the camps. She'd be an aid worker for half the year, and the other half of the year she goes back to Kansas City and tends her garden. And she likes to read little paperback novels that we gave her a Michael Crichton novel that we had both read twice over, actually. And she was the face really that we were trying to show, the fact that these are regular people who are able to step up and help, and that everyone, hopefully viewers who see this film, can appreciate. If Charlotte could make this big sacrifice, maybe I can make a little bit of sacrifice myself.
There's a sort of a tendency, I think, when you're sort of sitting at home, sort of looking at this problem, is that the people who are going to go off and do something are these just super heroic individuals who are, just incredible and just, not a mortal man.
Near saints.
Yeah, near saints. And then basically is that one of the things that actually Charlotte had mentioned is that it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And so you don't have to be a near saint to go off and do something that's profoundly affecting and incredibly useful.
Okay, so what are the hopes for this documentary?
Well, I don't think that any single project can solve a problem of this magnitude. What is going to lead to a resolution of this problem is lots of small steps from a lot of different people, and hopefully the aggregate of us making a project, somebody else making a project, of people writing their congressman, people getting somehow invested into this. The aggregate of that will lead to a solution.
Well,
and so we just want to do our part.
Keep us posted on the status of the doc. Let us know when it comes out.
Absolutely.
Ryan, Jason, Jim, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Welcome back.